Wyoming Territory, July 1881, the baby's cries echoed off stone and dust, sharp and helpless in the stillness of the churchyard. And that was what made Isaac Boone pull his horse to a stop. He had been headed west out of Laramie, his saddle worn and his thoughts quiet, when the sound reached him through the cottonwood trees. The wind was dry, the sky big and empty, and not a soul stirred on the road but him. Yet that cry, raw and honest, cut through it all like a blade. He dismounted, boots crunching on gravel, and pushed open the crooked iron gate of the old Methodist church. The building had not held a sermon in years. The white paint was peeling, the bell tower tilted, and the grave markers behind it leaned like tired men. Near the far edge of the yard, beside a low stone, a woman knelt in the dirt with a baby in her arms. She was not crying, but her shoulders were trembling like she wanted to. Her dark brown hair was braided back, her dress plain but clean, though the hem was stained with dust. The baby, no more than a few months old, wailed against her chest, red-faced and hungry. Isaac stepped closer and cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am," her head jerked up fast. She shifted her body, half shielding the baby, eyes wide with fear. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said quickly, raising his hands. "I heard the little one crying, thought someone might be in trouble." The woman stared at him, breathing hard. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She just looked exhausted, like someone who had not slept in days. Finally, she nodded once. "I can go," Isaac offered, keeping his voice low. "Just wanted to make sure you were all right." "Wait." Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Please." He stayed where he was. She took a shaky breath. "My name is Norah Kelley." "This is my boy, Elijah." She looked down at the baby, who had quieted to hiccuping gasps. "I just buried his father." Isaac's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." Norah looked at the earth beside her, freshly turned, still raw. The grave marker read, "Thomas Kelley, 1855–1881. "He got fever 3 days ago," she said. "There was no doctor, no one would come this far. By the time I figured out what to do, it was too late." Isaac stepped closer, slow and careful. "You out here alone?" "I was hoping to find work in Laramie. We stopped here to rest." Her voice caught. "He died that night. There wasn't even a preacher to say words over him." Isaac looked at her hands. They were scraped and dirt-streaked, nails broken from digging. Her baby whimpered again. "I do not have anything," she said quietly. "No food, no horse. No money, but I could wash or so, or you do not owe me anything." Isaac reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He knelt down and placed $2 silver on the stone beside the grave. "You are safe with me." Norah blinked, stunned. He met her eyes. "You and your boy. I will get you someplace dry, warm. I got food, water, a second bedroll." Her mouth opened and closed. "Why, you do not even know me." Isaac stood. "You need help. That is enough." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she looked down at Elijah, who had fallen asleep against her chest, one tiny hand curled around her dress. She nodded once, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Isaac turned and led her toward his horse. They moved slow. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the graves. He helped her into the saddle and handed her the reins, then tied his pack down and walked beside them. They made camp 2 miles south, beside a shallow creek. Isaac built the fire while Norah sat on a blanket, rocking Elijah gently. She did not speak much, but when she looked at Isaac, her eyes were no longer afraid, just tired. He handed her a tin plate of beans and bread. She took it with both hands, whispering a soft "thank you." "You do not have to say that," he muttered, sitting across from her. "Yes, I do." They ate in silence. The stars came out, clear and sharp above the trees. When the baby woke, fussing, Isaac handed her a canteen of clean water and turned away to give her privacy. She fed the child quietly, humming something soft under her breath, almost too soft to hear. Later, when the fire had burned low and the baby was asleep again, Norah looked at him across the flames. "You are not from around here." "No," Isaac said. "Born in Arkansas, rode west after the war, Union or Confederate, Union. My father died at Shiloh." He paused. "I never went back," she nodded, not asking more. "You," he asked. "Born in Kansas," she said. Married young, Thomas was a ranch hand. We moved often, never stayed long in one place. You got any family left? She shook her head. My father passed last spring, my mother before that. Thomas was all I had. Isaac looked at the baby who had curled a tiny hand into Norah's shawl. Not all, she smiled, but it was small and sad. No, not all. The fire crackled between them. Somewhere an owl called out. Norah pulled her shawl tighter. You do not have to keep riding, Isaac said. I know a couple near Medicine Bow. They run a dry goods store, good people, they will take you in. I do not want charity, she said firmly. It is not charity, he said. It is a start. Norah looked at him. Her eyes were dark and steady. And what about you? I will stay nearby a while. Make sure you are settled. Her voice was quiet. Why are you being so kind? Isaac looked into the fire. I lost a brother to sickness, Mama too. When I see someone hurting, I try to do right. He looked up at her. That is all. Norah stared at him for a long time, then she whispered, That is more than most. They did not speak much more that night. When it came time to sleep, Isaac laid his bedroll on the far side of the fire and turned his back to give her space. He heard her lay the baby down, heard the soft rustle of her dress as she settled beside him, and then, just before sleep took him, he heard her voice again, soft and sure. Good night, Isaac. He opened his eyes, staring at the stars. Good night, Norah. The baby did not cry again that night. Morning broke slow and gold, sunlight slipping through the cottonwoods and catching on the dew that clung to the grass. Norah sat near the edge of the creek, sleeves rolled up, dipping Elijah's soiled cloth into the cool water. Her hands moved with quiet purpose, but her eyes kept drifting toward the man crouched by the fire, tending a skillet. Isaac had stripped off his coat and worked in his shirt sleeves, rifle propped nearby as if habit demanded it even here. He didn't glance her way, but he'd already poured water for her and set aside a warmed biscuit, wrapped in a cloth to keep it soft. Elijah stirred in the sling across her chest, waking with a soft grunt. She wiped her hands on her skirt and adjusted the sling, murmuring low. The child settled, cheek pressing into her collarbone. Isaac didn't speak until she came to sit near the fire. Oats'll be ready soon. I found some dried apricot in my pack too. I can share what's left of the beans, she said. I'd rather you eat something sweet. He flipped the skillet once, then looked over. You sleep? Some. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You, he shrugged. Enough. Her fingers brushed Elijah's back as he suckled. You said you knew a couple in Medicine Bow. I did. Isaac stirred the oats, letting the silence fill in again before continuing. Man's name is Russ. He's part Arapaho, used to trap along the Platte. Married a woman from Virginia, Ada. She sews better than most folks breathe. They got room behind their store. I helped Russ build the walls last winter. They'll take me in. They'll give you honest work, a place to sleep, and no questions that don't need asking. Norah nodded, eyes on the flames. I'll pay them back. Not everything has to be paid for. She didn't answer that, not aloud, but the line of her jaw said she didn't believe it. Isaac handed her the skillet. Careful, it's hot. She took it with both hands, murmured thanks. He poured a tin cup of coffee for himself and sat back on his heels, watching the creek drift past. The breeze smelled of pine and the distant sweetness of wild yarrow. After a while, Norah said, What kind of work do you do mostly? Depends on the season. Fence mending, cattle driving, hauling freight. I know enough about horses to keep one alive and enough about people to stay out of their way. She looked at him sharply. You're not like most men I've met. He didn't smile. Just took a sip of his coffee and said, That for better or worse? I haven't decided yet. That made a corner of his mouth twitch barely. She tilted her head. You always travel alone, mostly. Why? He didn't answer at first. Then, I've seen what happens when you build something just to have it torn away. Seems easier to keep moving. Norah didn't press. Instead, she shifted Elijah higher, her hand resting at the base of his neck. He smiled yesterday, first time since Thomas passed. Isaac looked over. He's warm, fed, and close to you. That's all he knows to want, she nodded. I keep thinking about how he won't remember any of this, not the churchyard, not the grave. But you will, her eyes met his. That's the trouble, isn't it? He didn't look away. It can be. They broke camp in the late morning. Isaac showed her how to balance her weight on the horse without jostling the baby and how to wrap her shawl so the wind wouldn't pull it loose. She listened close, asked questions when she didn't understand. The ride was slow, the trail narrow in places. Clouds gathered in the afternoon, but the rain held off. They passed a burned-out wagon near a bend in the trail. Norah said nothing, just pulled Elijah close and pressed her lips to his scalp. When they made camp again that night, it was near a grove of aspens. Isaac built the fire with dry bark and pine cones, and Norah helped lay out the blankets. Elijah lay in a nest of cloth, wide-eyed and quiet, watching moths circle the firelight. Isaac glanced at Norah as she tucked a wool shawl under the baby's feet. You ever ride before this? Only once. Thomas tried to teach me, but I was too stubborn to listen. She smiled faintly. I listened today. You did fine. Better than fine, I hope. I'd rather not fall off with my child strapped to me. You won't, he said, not as comfort but as fact. She looked across the fire, the light catching in her eyes. You don't say much unless you mean it. I don't see the use in words that don't hold. Later, when the fire was low and the wind had settled, Norah sat with her knees drawn up, Elijah tucked against her chest again. Isaac was checking the saddle straps by the tree, the fire casting his shadow long behind him. Without looking up, she spoke. Do you think a woman can start over truly? Not just survive, but build something new? Isaac stepped back into the firelight, crouched to stoke the coals. I think it depends on the ground she plants her feet in, and who's beside her when she does. She watched him through the rising smoke. You believe in second chances? I believe in what a person does with them. Her gaze dropped to Elijah's sleeping face. I want to give him more than ashes and sorrow. You already have. She looked back at him, slow and quiet. And what about you, Isaac Boone? What do you want? He didn't answer right away. Just sat down near her, his knees stretched toward the fire. When he did speak, his voice was low. I want to stop waking up wondering where to go next. They sat that way a long while, with only the wind in the trees and the hush of the baby's breathing between them. And though neither reached for the other, something had shifted quiet as a seed turning in the soil. They reached Medicine Bow just after midday, the sky washed pale by the high sun and the air heavy with the smell of horses and dry lumber. The town wasn't much, 2 rows of buildings crouching low against the wind, a rail spur, a water tower, and the distant hum of hammers at work on a barn roof. Norah rode with her spine straight and her chin lifted, Elijah pressed close beneath the folds of her shawl. Isaac walked beside her, his hand on the bridle to keep the horse steady through the ruts and loose dogs. They turned down a narrow alley behind the mercantile, where a shed leaned against a 2-room cabin, smoke curling from its crooked chimney. Isaac knocked twice on the back door. A woman opened it, middle-aged, with pale skin browned at the cheeks and a faded blue kerchief tied over her hair. She wiped her hands on her apron and squinted into the sun. Is that you, Boone? Afternoon, Ada. He stepped back, motioned to Norah. This is Norah Kelley. She's got a boy with her, needs work, shelter. Thought you might have both. Ada's gaze slid to Norah, then softened as she caught sight of Elijah's sleeping face. Bring her in. Russ is patching the fence, but he won't mind. Inside, the cabin was plain but warm. A braided rug lay near the hearth, and the scent of boiled potatoes lingered in the air. Norah eased down onto the edge of a bench while Ada poured water into a basin. How old's the child? 3 months. Lord, he's small. Ada dipped a cloth and handed it over. You feed him regular, Norah nodded. When I can. Ada gave a quiet grunt, neither pitying nor harsh. We do what we can. You'll take the back room. There's space for a cradle we've won in the attic from my sister's little girl. She turned to Isaac. You staying? He rested his hat against his thigh, only long enough to see her settled. Ada glanced between them, then gave a knowing tilt of the head. Suit yourself. Supper's at 6. That evening, Isaac helped Russ haul a half-rotted beam from the fence line. The man was broad-shouldered with gray streaked through his black braid and a quiet way of moving. "She's got the look of a woman who's seen too much too fast," Russ said. Isaac tipped his head. "She hasn't asked for anything." Russ set the beam down. "That's the kind most worth giving to." When Isaac returned to the cabin, Norah was sitting on the porch steps, Elijah asleep in a basket beside her. The breeze tugged at a strand of hair that had come loose behind her ear. "Russ seems kind," she said without turning. "He is." Isaac sat beside her, boots flat in the dirt. Norah rubbed her palms together. "Ada showed me the storeroom. She says I can help with sorting bolts and ledgers. She's going to teach me how to press collars, too. Think you'll like it here?" "I don't know yet," she said. "But it's the first place in a long while where the air doesn't feel borrowed." They watched the sun sink behind the livery, painting the world in gold and bronze. "Do you ever stop moving?" she asked. "I used to think stillness would feel too much like waiting. And now," he looked at the baby, then at her, "now I'm not so sure." Norah folded her hands in her lap. "I don't know how to be something new. I don't know how to let go of what's gone without feeling like I'm forgetting it. No one says you have to forget, but I have to stop living inside it." Isaac didn't answer, just reached down and brushed a bit of dust from Elijah's sleeve. His fingers were careful, reverent almost, as if the child might shatter under too much touch. Norah watched him. "You want children someday?" "I did once," he said, "back before I understood how easy it is to lose what you build." She turned toward him fully then, drawing her knees up. "You think building again means asking for more pain?" He met her eyes. "I think it means trusting someone else to stay." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It sat between them like something waiting to be named. Norah looked down at Elijah, then back at Isaac. "You stayed," he nodded. "I'm not sure I know how to ask someone to keep doing that." "You don't have to ask." She let that settle in, then stood slowly. "Will you come for supper?" "If I do," he said, rising beside her, "it won't be just for the food." She didn't look away. "Then you should come." Inside, the lamp light spilled across the table and the baby slept without stirring. Outside, the wind shifted, gentler now, like it had decided for the first time in a long while not to carry everything away. By the end of the second week, the rhythm of Medicine Bow had settled into Norah's bones. Mornings began early with the soft clatter of Ada's stove, the cool wash of well water on her hands, and Elijah's slow, waking grunts from his cradle. She took to the storeroom quickly, learning where each bolt of muslin, twine, and tin button belonged, how to tally ledger marks with a charred pencil stub and a square of oilskin. Ada didn't hover, and that was a kindness she hadn't expected. Isaac didn't stay in the cabin, but he hadn't left town either. He took up a short-term job hauling freight for the depot, loading crates of flour and seed onto wagons bound for ranches west of Elk Mountain. He slept in the bunkhouse behind the livery, but every evening before dusk he came to the mercantile. Sometimes he brought sacks of beans, once a tin of dried cherries. Always, he stayed long enough to ask after Elijah and help stack the heavy crates Ada couldn't manage alone. This evening, Norah swept the porch while Elijah dozed in a basket at her feet. The breeze tugged gently at the hem of her skirt, and the hush of cattle lowing in the distance gave the air a kind of hush. Isaac leaned against the railing, arms crossed, watching the sky shift from blue to violet. "You ever think about heading farther west?" she asked, not looking at him. "I have," he said. "Not lately." "What changed?" He glanced toward the open shop door where the lamplight glowed faintly. "Place doesn't matter much if there's nothing waiting at the end of the road." She rested the broom against the wall. "I've never been west of Cheyenne, just names on letters, places others talked about. Most of them look the same from the saddle. Dust, sky, and whatever's left standing." "Is that what you were looking for, all that time moving? Something still standing?" He rubbed the heel of his thumb along the grain of the porch rail. "I think I was just trying to outpace what I couldn't carry." The silence between them stretched without strain. Norah sat on the edge of the step, brushing a bit of straw from her apron. "You believe in luck?" she asked. He sat down beside her. "Not in the way folks talk about it." "But I believe in timing," she nodded. "Thomas used to say luck was just God's way of staying anonymous." Isaac looked at her then, his gaze steady. "And what do you say?" "I say if God had a hand in it, he must be tired of my prayers." Maybe he answered one, just not the way you expected. She didn't respond to that right away. Her hand moved to Elijah's blanket, smoothing a crease near his foot. "Russ told me about the graveyard fire 2 years back," she said softly. "Said 2 families lost everything, burned right through the pine fencing and the church roof." Isaac nodded. "I helped dig out the foundation after. We found melted hinges and ash." "Not much else. Is that why you stopped?" "Stopped what?" Looking for something new, he was quiet, his fingers curling around the edge of the step. "I didn't stop. I just started waiting to see if something would find me instead." Norah turned toward him, the lines of her face softened by the porch lamp behind her. "And if it did, I'd need to be sure it wanted to stay." She didn't look away. "I haven't thought about staying anywhere since Thomas died." "Not until now." Isaac leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "I'm not asking anything of you, Norah, but I'm not going to pretend I haven't thought about what it would mean if you did." She exhaled slowly. "I've been holding my breath for months. I didn't realize it until this week. Then maybe it's time to breathe." They sat in the deepening dusk, the quiet stretching soft around them. Elijah stirred once, shifting in his sleep, the basket creaking faintly beneath his weight. Isaac reached down and adjusted the blanket. His touch was unhurried, familiar now. Norah watched his hand, then looked at him again. "Would you walk with me tomorrow, after the shop closes?" "I would." She stood, lifting Elijah into her arms with practiced ease. "I'll bring supper out to the porch if you don't mind cold potatoes. I've eaten worse." She smiled with her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, there was no shadow behind it. "Good night, Isaac." His voice was quiet. "Good night, Norah." She disappeared inside, the door closing with a soft click. Isaac lingered on the porch a while longer, watching the last of the light slip behind the hills. When he finally stood, the wind had changed, and the air smelled faintly of lilac from the bush growing wild near the fence. The walk led them beyond the edge of town, where the grass grew tall between the cottonwoods, and the ground sloped gradual toward the river. The day had folded itself into evening, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wild mint. Norah held Elijah close in the wrap across her chest, his head tucked beneath her chin. Isaac walked just behind, carrying a small parcel of bread and a folded quilt beneath one arm. They didn't speak at first. The hush between them wasn't uneasy, it moved like water over stones, slow and unhurried. When Norah finally turned to look at him, her face was quietly open. "I've been thinking," she said, "how much of the world I missed while trying to hold onto what I knew." Isaac adjusted the quilt under his arm. "Familiar things can feel safer than they are. I didn't see that until I lost them. I kept believing if I stayed still long enough, something would go back to how it was." He nodded once. "And now, I don't want stillness for the sake of it," she said. "I want something that grows." They reached the edge of the river where a wide maple leaned over the water. Its roots twisted into the bank, and the earth there was dry enough to lay the quilt without trouble. Isaac spread it out and Norah settled onto it, loosening the wrap so Elijah could stretch his legs. The baby kicked once and made a soft sound, barely awake. "I've never had a place that felt like mine," she said. "Not really." Isaac sat beside her, arms resting loosely on his knees. "You could have won now, here, if you wanted." She studied the river, how it caught the last light of the sun and scattered it in broken gold. "Would you stay, Isaac?" "I would," he said, "but not for the work or the land." Norah's eyes lifted to his. "Then for what?" "For the chance to build something with you." The wind moved the leaves gently above them. Elijah stirred, reached one hand toward the sky, then settled again. "I've been afraid to hope for more," she said slowly, "but I'm more afraid of missing it if I don't reach." Isaac didn't answer with words. He reached across the space between them and took her hand, rough fingers curling around hers with quiet certainty. "I've never had a man be steady without asking me to earn it," she said. "Not until you don't owe me anything," he said, "but I'd take whatever you offer." She looked down at their joined hands. "Would you marry me, Isaac Boone?" Isaac didn't hesitate. "Yes." "If you'll let me carry your sorrow beside your joy." Norah let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. "Then come to the preacher tomorrow. I'll bring Russ and Ada for witness, and I'll bring Elijah." Isaac looked at the child. "Then we'll be 3. She smiled, not with sorrow this time, but with something deeper, steadier. 3 is more than I ever dreamed I'd have again." They leaned into each other, the river humming beside them, Elijah asleep between. The last of the suns slipped below the hills, and the stars began to gather overhead. They married beneath the wide sky, standing on the porch beside the mercantile, with Russ holding Elijah and Ada smoothing Norah's veil with reverent hands. The preacher from the next county over spoke the words clearly, and when Isaac placed the simple gold ring on Norah's finger, her hand didn't tremble. They moved into the small cabin behind the store. Isaac built a cradle from pine boards and carved Elijah's name into the headboard with a steady hand. Norah stitched curtains for the windows and hemmed Isaac's shirts with patient fingers. In the months that followed, Isaac took up work at the livery and helped Russ build a new storeroom. Norah managed the ledgers for the shop and began sewing dresses for the women in town. Elijah grew strong and bright-eyed, his laughter a constant thread in the quiet of their home. Most evenings, after supper and the day's work had settled into memory, they sat together on the porch. Isaac's arm around her waist, Norah's head resting against his shoulder, Elijah curled asleep in her lap. They didn't speak much on those nights. They didn't need to. The wind carried no sorrow anymore, only the scent of pine, of earth, of things planted and growing. Isaac had found what he hadn't known he was searching for. Norah had built something lasting, not from what she had lost, but from what she had chosen to keep. And together they stayed.